Don't forget.
Every day, it's all, yeah. In fact, one of those front row, the president.
Oh, my God.
He never got it.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes. Someone?
I got the wrong day.
Okay. We did, yes, you're right.
I should have said that the other day. Papers.
You might have Alma anything. I don't know off the top of my head.
And you that it's quoted.
She did. She had her duty with the boss. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, they did that. It must have been last Tuesday, maybe.
Well,
So,
I was trying to tell it.
And she's joining me now, so. I think we can start anytime. Angie.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Trustee Winkleblack,
Here.
trustee Evans,
Here,
trustee Price. Here. And Mayor Wilcox.
Here. Are there any changes or deletions to the agenda?
I would ask that, item number 8, if we could correct I don't know where Old Main Liquor came from, but I believe the business is Main Street Liquors. What's it called, Ed?
Main Street Liquor.
Yeah, that's-
DBA.
I'm not sure where Old Main Liquor came from, but
Competition, I guess.
I'm sure it's correct on the application, which is where it matters.
Okay.
but maybe you can just say the right name and sit for the record.
Person is not on the agenda. Anybody wants to speak that's not on the agenda? No,
Yeah, but somebody else.
yeah, Melanie Clark.
I was gonna sign in 6 times, so I have 3 minutes for each one, but.
Can speed talk.
Melanie Clark, 59143 Guthrie Road. So what I'm handing you guys right now is a resolution number 5, series 2018. Which was adopting a code of conduct for elected officials and town. board. Reason I'm bringing this up is in the last meeting and several meetings prior, I've noticed that lack of presence by some board members and or staff, as well as disrespect. I feel that the people in the audience have to be respectful. I think the board members should have to be respectful as well as town employees. So we'll leave it at that. If anybody else wants for a copy. This was adopted July 10th of 2018 and signed by Mr. Lou Evans, who was mayor at the time. I think that the rolling of the eyes in several meetings that I've been to in the last several months is just unprofessional. And I think that needs to cease. My next item that I have is in our last meeting, which I believe, if I recall correctly, was February 18th. And we were discussing Heritage Days. All the events that were gonna take place, and we were supposed to have a meeting on the following Friday. And people were gonna get contacted for that meeting. I never saw a hide or hair of that meeting. It was supposed to be with the town board, and I believe Tammy Clark and whomever is in her committee. I don't know who they are.
Right.
And nothing happened with that, but I'm aware. I've given her my phone number. Does anybody know anything about that?
Well, the meeting was actually, there was gonna be a special meeting.
Okay,
talked about Tuesday and Friday, the special meeting parlor got canceled. I did come down Tuesday morning and several of the local businesses, including Main Street Liquors, was here, so,
So a special meeting but didn't get.
no,
posted.
there was no special, there was no quorum. It was just a group of the business people that met right here in the town hall.
Angie didn't know that Tammy requested to have address the board and get this organized and going, because Angie wasn't here.
So there was a miscommunication, but we have rescheduled that meeting for the 7th of March at 9 AM. Just as offering a forum for the community members to get together and discuss event planning as they would like to. And events, they're community driven and community committee driven. So certainly, I'm happy to provide special event applications and street closure permit applications for any community members that want to organize an event and request a special event permit from the board.
And is this posted?
Probably not.
So isn't it supposed to be a meeting of the board and the committee members?
That's what we requested, but
That's what I thought.
So the posting is required a notice 24 hours in advance. I have already sent out the invitation. I do need to post that meeting this week. I've been a little preoccupied with what you see in the packet this evening. But I will get that posted this evening or this week. And it won't be like a full-on agenda. It's basically just going to be a notice that there may be a quorum present of the Board of Trustees.
And who did that, you said you sent out an invitation, who did that go to?
There's a whole list of folks that have requested to be on that list. If I haven't interacted with you or had your email, then I probably didn't put you on that list. But it is going to be Friday at 9 AM at Town Hall.
Okay. And then next item is, what are we doing with the Town of Collbran Facebook page? I've noticed nothing's been posted on it at all. Are we moving forward with that page so people can be informed?
I'm happy to meet with you and discuss these items off public meeting. Typically, we don't respond to public comment during meetings. But I am happy to talk to you about these items, off camera.
Okay. And you're here when?
I'm there Tuesday through Friday.
Okay.
And if you'd like to make an appointment, I'm more than happy to do that. Feel free to give a town hall a call tomorrow and I can set up an appointment for you, or you can stop by at your convenience.
And the next item I have is, in the last, not the last meeting, but probably maybe two before, we had discussed pursuing something with the asbestos company with either their insurance or the company that did the inspection for the asbestos. Has anybody followed up on that?
From what I understand was brought up, there was not when the contract was signed and Enzi would have to look into it, that we don't have, the inspector wasn't licensed he's licensed, but it wasn't a bonded estimate or whatever.
Oh, that's a big no. Okay,
Ms. Clark, again, I'm happy to meet with you and provide, information about these things that you're requesting information on. We don't typically interact and crosstalk with the board during meetings, public meetings. And I'm, if you want to make comments about certain things, you're more than welcome to do that. But I am, as far as answering questions and whatnot, we do have a meeting and a whole lot of stuff to get done on the agenda. I'm happy to meet with you one-on-one and answer questions that you have.
okay, I got one more question, and then I would like to ask that, I would like to request that every item that I mentioned tonight be put on next month's agenda. So if you can do that for me, I'd really appreciate it. The next item I have is, has anybody followed through with the engineer that said there was nothing wrong with the foundation on that community center, and did we ever get a civil engineer report? I had asked in the last meeting, and Carla had mentioned that we do have something like that, but do we actually has somebody actually looked for it? And if you can't answer my questions, that's fine, but I would love to have all those items put on the agenda, so. I think that these are things that really need to be followed up on, especially if there's some sort of, excuse me, statute of limitations on going back on these companies. I think it's important that this gets followed up on, and the sooner the better.
Go ahead.
Thank you for hearing me out, and I guess I'll send you a list.
Yeah, Denise, Alice.
Me Seal, reside on Dolores Drive in Collbran. And I would agree with Angie, I've read that code of conduct, and with when the public speakers, there's not supposed to be interaction and
No, I-
questions answered.
Except for, no, nothing changed except for basically you're directing the comments to me,
Right.
so, yeah, it's correct.
Okay.
But no, I.
Yeah, but just saying,
Right.
so I've attended by Zoom or physically the majority of the council meetings in April 2024. And I'd like to recap the events and the costs incurred by the taxpayers of Collbran due to the resignations of the town staff, town council, and the recall expenses. I've not seen these amounts tallied up, and I think it's important for the mayor, the council, the voters, and taxpayers to know the costs. I've taken the figures from the town budget and from discussion at the council meetings. If there are any inaccuracies, please feel free to correct them when I'm finished. In April 2024, Mayor Wilcox, trustees Price and Winkleblack were voted for and sworn in. Trustees Zentz and Evans were existing council with 2 years, council members with 2 years remaining on their terms. In my opinion, having trustees Zentz and Evans were an asset to the incoming mayor and trustees. They had knowledge of existing and pending projects and contracts and were able to provide background details which appeared to aid in the decision-making process. A recall petition was circulated in October to recall both trustee Evans and trustee Zentz. The petition stated an opinion that Collbran has a town administrator directed board of trustees versus a board directed town administrator. There was a hearing conducted to confirm the validity of the recall petition. Apparently, as long as you have 32 signatures, there doesn't have to be a credible or substantiated reason for the recall. If you don't like someone, you can attempt a recall. The intent was to replace Evans and Zentz with trustees who would then fire Melanie Matarazzo, the town clerk administrator. The recall petition is signed by 32 people, including trustee Price and another person who also happens to be running to replace the recall trustees. In January of this year, Melanie, the clerk administrator, and Jenny Lynn, administrative staff, resigned from the town due to what they perceived as a hostile work environment. In February, trustee Zentz resigned from the council. A tally of the cost, the recall, replacement staff, and election are as follows. Cost of additional attorney fees. The town attorney cost me 2 months ago that the town may use more in fees than budgeted due to the amount of time he has spent on the recall efforts, town council, and town staff issues. At that same meeting, trustee Price directed him to write a job description for an interim town administrator. Any of the council members could have done this. It doesn't require an attorney. Any additional cost of attorney fees will have to be calculated at the end of the year to see the over budget cost. The cost of recall hearing by Judy Egbert, $4,000. Cost of retaining Judy Egbert to supervise the recall election, $14,000. Cost of election ballots mailing estimated at $3,000. The cost of the interim town clerk for 3 months is $43,200. The next 2 months' salary for a permanent replacement would be 16,000. The reason for this is that Melanie was paid 6 months severance. So anything in the next 6 months is an additional cost. This is a total of $80,000 additional cost to the town. The town receives 22,000 in property tax revenue and about 110,000 in sales tax revenue. The cost of the recall elections staffing is 61% of the town revenue. Luckily, the town received a generous 1 million in sales revenue for the county of Mesa, so Collbran won't be running on empty. I encourage all town residents to understand how their money is being spent and to vote in the upcoming election. Thank you.
Yeah, item number 6, approval of minutes for February 11th, 2025. 14 minutes. And B, February 18th, 2025.
I move approval of the meeting minutes from February 11th, 2025.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Are we doing them one at a time?
Yes.
So the motion is for February the 11th.
Yes.
Okay. May we have a vote?
Trustee Winkleblack,
Yes.
trustee Evans,
Yes.
trustee Price,
Yes.
and Mayor Wilcox.
Yes. Okay, B, February 18th, 2025. Minutes.
I mean, we'll move, we approve the ordinance from the meeting February 18th, 2025.
A second motion.
Right?
I would just say that, it says there was also an extended discussion about the 4th of July. Town staff was asked to coordinate a meeting with interested parties. That is false information and Tammy, the way I recall, asked that she could speak to the board and anybody interested so that we can start planning for the events for the 4th of July. And we left here under the impression that there was a board meeting.
I actually left with the impression that there was a meeting and that it was not going to be a called board meeting.
I was under the impression that we would have a special meeting, but it was, as I recall, it was supposed to be for Tuesday at 10 a.m. We covered that, I guess, miscommunications. Any further discussion?
So is the motion still as written or
Yes.
is there an amendment to it?
Would you like to add?
I mean, who prepared the minutes?
I did,
Did you listen to the recording? When you
I
prepared the minutes?
believed I had, and
I'm not really sure, if I may, I'm not really sure, you know, what the relevance of going down this path is. I think that we've established there was a miscommunication. We've rescheduled the meeting and made a good faith effort to just move forward in a positive manner and get the community together to discuss these events. So
I
that's all I have
completely,
to say.
but I'm not approving minutes that are inaccurate and Tilda requires me to say why I don't approve minutes. So that's why I'm not going to approve the minutes.
Yes, but I don't know that, addressing the staff is necessarily the direction we want to go in this meeting.
That's fine.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, may we have a vote?
Trustee Price,
No,
trustee Winkleblock,
Yes.
trustee Evans,
Yes.
Mayor Wilcox.
Yes. Number 8, liquor license renewal application for,
Mr. Mayor, can you skip number 7?
oh, sorry. Approval for the monthly financial report. Okay. Is there any discussion on the financial report?
No, for me.
Okay. Um,
Move approval of the February 2025 financial report.
Second that.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. We have a vote.
Trustee Evans,
Yes.
trustee Winkleblock,
Yes.
trustee Price,
no,
and Mayor Wilcox.
Yes. Number 8. Liquor license renewal application for Old Liquor or Main Street Liquor.
Street liquor it is, yes,
Main Street Liquor.
and it doesn't matter. If they're downloadable, we can be owner of Main Street Liquor. You have my packet in front of you, you have all the information that's necessary for your consent on the approval.
have you had any violations the last year?
They're violated every day. Well, look at me, just a point of interest, I was never notified, I was even on the agenda. There seems to be a lack of communication still here. I found out by printing out myself.
From the board or from the town website. I mean.
Yeah, from town board, staff, whatever, yeah.
So you had to come into the building.
Well, I put it at the bottom, saw my name up here, my wife came in and verified it today,
Right,
so just to make sure that I was.
you found it on the town website.
Yep.
Something we should definitely be more expedient.
Right, and whatever the list for these meetings that we're supposed to have on Friday, I know about the meetings because I was here. But I haven't been contacted about that either, so I don't know what mailer. We need to get me on that too.
Okay,
If you'd like to reach out to me tomorrow with your email address, I'm happy to send you the invite to that, but it is Friday morning at 9 a.m. at Town Hall.
Okay.
that will also be posted on our board outside the town hall as well. And the outside postings, is that correct, Angie?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
I motion we approve the liquor license renewer application for Main Street Liquors.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? How soon can they get their license?
I'm not entirely sure, but I would believe the process is it's back to the state now. But
Everybody else gets theirs within 30 to 45 days of their appearance on the board, except for me. It always takes 6 months and I don't know why.
okay,
Fix that.
and perhaps you want to address that to Administrator Spring.
It was all in that packet, all the paperwork showing what time I get my approval, time that I actually get my certificate. It always takes 6 months and it doesn't need to take that long.
All right, I understand. So the next piece of this is gonna be up to the state's approval process. We are working to gain access to the state's website. And we will go from here and move it along as best we can. At this point, it is up to the state to do their portion.
Okay, also in the packet is a piece of paper that I always had to get that shows that I'm approved, so I can become a distributor, so I can continue to run my business. So there's a letter I have to get if I can't get the certificate. And it's in the package, it's everything I submitted to you.
Okay, I'll take a look at that and we'll be in touch. I'll let you know as soon as that's submitted to the state. We do have our town clerk, Dusty Coella, and she'll be your point of contact for liquor licensing. And she's working on getting that access to the state right now as the clerk. That's one of her functions, and I'm sure you'll very much like working with her. She's a good lady, so she'll help you through the process.
I'll second the motion.
All right. No further discussion, why we have a vote, please?
So I'm sorry, I had you as the second, right?
Yeah, we already had a motion, I'm sorry.
Oh, we already had a second.
Yeah,
All right.
Trustee Price,
Yes.
Trustee Winkleblack,
Yes.
Trustee Evans,
Yes,
Mayor Wilcox.
yes,
Loma?
Thank you.
number 9, Collbran Plateau Valley School Water Extension Project. Plateau Valley School District, Town of Collbran Water Extension, IGA, Mesa County, and the Town of Collbran Water Extension, IGA, for grant management assistance, easement deed and agreement. D, task order 2404-00219-03 with KLJ Engineering for waterline construction, observation and management. E, placeholder resolution 2025-005. A, resolution of the Town of Collbran, Colorado, approving agreements for the Plateau Valley School Water Extension Project. So any discussion on?
That was a lot of reading.
can we hear from Ms. Spring regarding this? As the town, she's purpose putting this together.
Absolutely. So on page 22 of your packet this evening, you'll see a memo to the board outlining just a brief background and the discussion that's before you this evening. Basically, you have an IGA between the Platteville Valley School District and the Town of Collbran for the water extension project. You also have one between Mesa County and the Town of Collbran for grant management assistance and support. Due to the staff transitions, that's why that one is before you. There's also an easement and deed agreement between the town and the school district, and then a task order with KLJ Engineering to oversee the water line construction, observation, and management. And that is an important task order. The school district will be paying for those support services. DOLA was concerned about the continuity of the project, management oversight, and the grant management with the current transitions going on in staffing in town. So that's why you specifically see the Mesa County Town of Collbran Grant Management Assistance IGA, as well as the task order with KLJ Engineering to oversee the construction and observation management. It provides that continuity that DOLA was concerned about throughout the project. continuity, consistency, whatever you wanna refer to that as. So before the board this evening, is, the request to approve these 4 items via resolution. So it's just a one simple motion. There is also a financial analysis there, which explains how and who will be paying for what, when, and how the money will change hands so that the funding can come from DOLA. And it is quite a generous grant. Are there any questions about the memo or anything?
The reimbursement to the town, that includes the overseeing from, the engineering company, KLJ. Is that correct?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, Carla and Wilson, I believe that the school district will be paying for that either directly or it would be a reimbursement.
So that's my understanding as well. KLJ is paying, or sorry, the school district is paying for KLJ. To just briefly address or I guess the reimbursement procedure, how this is supposed to work under the IGA, and I think we've talked about this with the board before, but it's sort of been in different pieces, and now we have everything together in one package. Is that the school district is going to be working with their contractor FCI to get this water line built. FCI is going to be sending monthly invoices to the school district to for the work they have done in the last month. In order for the town's reimbursement grant with DOLA to work, the town has there has to be a check from the town to the contractor for that amount. So what the school district will be doing is when they receive an invoice from FCI, they will forward to the town both that invoice, and they will also at the same time simultaneously wire transfer the same amount of money that it will require to pay that invoice. The town then pays that invoice to FCI. When the town has paid the invoice to FCI, the town can then take that invoice showing a check from the town to FCI, submit that to DOLA. DOLA will then approve that and reimburse. And technically the funds that DOLA is reimbursing will be half of the cost, which will be paid back to the school district. But that will mean effectively that the town is not paying for any of the costs. The school district is just receiving the benefit of those grant funds that are passing through the town. And the school district has their own grant funds that they will be using to subsidize the project as well. So we have set this up so that the town does not have any additional financial obligations under this. The town does not have to cash flow any of this before it receives reimbursement from DOLA. And this was all worked out between DOLA, between the school district, and all of the other entities that are involved here. So that's Mesa County with regard to the grant management services IGA and the easement agreement where the water tank that's going to provide service to the school is going to be located. Assuming the board votes to approve this tonight, Mesa County will be voting. We'll have this in front of their board later this month, and the school district will also have this in front of their board later this month. I believe they are trying to break ground in April. So everything is ready to go, and our hope is that everything gets approved tonight so that this project can finally move forward and meet its construction deadlines, because they're planning on breaking ground in April, and they've got some pretty tight deadlines to get this water line fully installed before the ground gets too cold in the wintertime.
I know that our maintenance manager, Mike Nichols, will be working with them as well, and overseeing the project. You can see, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Superintendent. But since the town has to maintain it, Mike was going to be, he met down at the school when you had the meeting down there. And then he'll be in contact with the Colorado State CDOT and Mesa County as well. Inspection wise, since we have to maintain it once it's all done and it's ours. Will there be any reimbursement for our employee being on site?
No, there would not be a reimbursement for that, since we are taking on the management of it once it is in place. That's sort of an expected cost. He certainly won't be there 24/7 during the project to oversee that by any means. You know, he'll be present during the inspections, probably with KLJ, and just to have a general understanding of the project.
As far as overseeing all of the paperwork and whatnot, I guess we've, been fortunate that the county has agreed to, take care of that at no charge to the town of Collbran. So
It's
they'll make
very
sure-
generous.
They'll
It's
make
very
sure,
generous of them.
so that's one thing that we won't have to take care of. Okay,
I would just like to say, this is a lengthy law degree contract, and this is the ideal kind of things that work sessions are made for. To go over stuff like this. And to have everything explained for a good hour. So maybe for future reference. Good long contracts with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 items on them would be a great thing, subject for a work session. So that we can be fully informed and have everything explained to us, because it's not probably appropriate to spend an hour to work through this contract at a board meeting.
Typically, the staff typically doesn't work, you know, attorneys and staff, we're typically happy to answer questions. You know, but the specifics of contracts are normally negotiated between the professionals, and that's what we're here for, is to support you through the contracting process and working with, you know, our partners to essentially get the job done in an efficient manner.
Yeah, it'd just be
That's
nice
why
to
we
have
have lawyers,
to go through the entire contract.
line by line.
Yeah, not necessarily line by line, but to go through it, so.
What questions do you have?
There's no time for it, so. Moving on.
like I said, in the future, if we want to do that, we could call a work session or. a
Right.
meeting to do that.
That's kind of what work sessions are for.
Okay.
Well, I can tell you, I appreciate the fact that, you know, one. Bill grant was written by the staff and approved by Bill, $1 million, and it definitely benefits the school district. In the town and the community in itself. I think, as I read this document, I mean, at one time. The approval of the Dole grant was in jeopardy with the current situation that's going on with the town board and some of the things that have gone on, so it was in jeopardy at one point in time, but this whole has been put together. And everything's in line, I think we're ready to. Put the water line in and get the school what they needed. I think it's it's a great opportunity for us to work with the school, and it's virtually at no cost to the town, and a great advantage to the school. And thanks to all those who wrote the grant and the $1 million that will come your way. And I appreciate everything that you've done, Trevor, and the school district as well, to help us get this moved along.
Yeah, including offering to help out with the travel expenses for our staff to go over to.
Well, likewise, I want to say thank you to the town, and our collaboration, especially with the county, to step forward in this time and kind of intercede with the IGA and the DOLA administration, so we could save that. Was exceptional on their behalf. So again, thank you. We could have not done this without the partnership with the town, and our board did, Mr. Mayor, meet last week and had a special meeting to sign the IGA. So yep, we are in lockstep with the town, and thank you for your support.
There's one question. Has this always been a 50-50 match? Cause that's the first time I've seen that.
Yes. Yeah, but the school is. Making up the difference is my understanding, so it's not costing us, it's not costing, in the end, it won't cost the town anything. Except for what we need to update, like at the clinic, for that airlock situation, which is needed done for quite some time.
So it's a $2 million project, the school's paying half, the Dole is paying half.
I just had never seen it presented that way in any of the documents prior to that. I would just been, they got $1 million grant. Yeah. So that's pretty.
Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you very much.
I move we approve resolution 2025-005, a resolution of the town of Collbran, Colorado, approving agreements for the Platte Valley School Water Extension Project.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Hearing none, may we have a vote, please?
Trustee Winkleblack,
Yes,
trustee Price,
Yes,
trustee Evans,
Yes,
Mayor Wilcox.
Yes. Item 10, Board of Trustees vacancy. Appointment versus special election.
Mr. Mayor, members of the board, this item before you today is in relation to the recent resignation of trustee Zentz, and I may not be pronouncing her last name right. If I am incorrectly pronouncing that, I do apologize. So upon her resignation, a vacancy upon the seat vacancy was created on the board. And we need to have a discussion tonight about how we want to move forward in filling that vacancy. So the current recall that's underway, when that resignation occurred, basically the current recall question that's going to be on the ballot will then have two candidates presented to the community for for the seat that's in question in the recall specifically. And there's a vacancy, so the vacancy was created separate from that. It's no longer part of the recall election. So now that we have this vacancy, we have the option to either hold another special election or make an appointment until the end of the term for former trustee Zent's seat. And I've quoted in the staff report here, memorandum, whatever you want to call it, the code that applies, the town code that applies to this specific situation. Our recommendation would be, of course, to hold a recruitment process to recruit for the vacancy in an effort to save the town approximately $10,000 or more by if it were to hold another special election. That's the anticipated cost. So that's all I've got for you for your discussion.
what would your
And this is-
recruitment process look like?
So, just like a normal hiring process, we can post the position for a period of time. We would need to fill this vacancy within 60 days from when it occurred. So, we could post the position for, say, 30 days, maybe take out an ad in the local paper, post it on the website, and seek
Would you consider-
applications.
Would you consider sending it out in the bills? In the water bill, an announcement?
So the water bill does have a small area for on the postcard itself that we could put a little bit of information. I'm not sure how much information, how many letters or how much information we could fit on that card. I'm just not privy to that, just because I just started. So, but I could certainly that would be an option. I could look into that.
Well, in the past, the public doesn't know when there's openings, so that's something it's a pet peeve of mine that the public knows. not everybody gets the newspaper and not everybody checks the town website every day or comes to town hall to look at the bulletin board, but everybody does get a water bill.
And not everybody reads it.
Well, sometimes our water bills come in an envelope, right? Sometimes it doesn't come in a card, so I guess we could do that one-time billing. And include a statement I know it requires some additional postage, but that seems to be an easy solution.
Yes,
Just put a statement in with the water bill,
yes.
announcing the dates, and the information that we would put together about, applying for. Because really, when you look at it, trustee Zent's tenure is probably less than a year now. So it would make no sense to have an election for a position that is gonna be up in this time next year. She only had a year left, is that correct, Phil? You're on the same one, right?
Yes.
So, so we're really backfilling a position that has about a year left. So it doesn't make any sense to go to any additional cost other than to say, have an appointment, and Angie can put together what the process is in terms of the appointment. How many days we have to put it out, what's the process, so on and so forth.
Well, then we could, it wouldn't hurt to put it out, like I said, not everybody opens their water bill, but it certainly can hurt to, it's just more transparency to the public. At least they have a choice to see it if it's on the water bill. Go ahead.
Did I hear you say that this process that you're talking about could take up to at least 60 days? I'm addressing Angie Sprague.
She may not be able to hear you. It's very hard to hear from the audience.
Okay.
Angie, did you hear that?
I did hear the question. Would the mayor like me to answer a question of the member of the public at this time?
Please.
I'm sorry.
Yes, please.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, the answer, can you repeat the question? I'm sorry.
We have 60 days. She's confirming we have 60 days to fill this vacancy.
But it may take
Yes,
long.
yes, ma'am. So we would need to fill the vacancy within 60 days of her resignation, which was February 11th. Otherwise, that would automatically trigger a special election. So we are on a time crunch. And we would want to get it posted as soon as possible and try to do a 30-day window for applications and opening that up to the community in that manner. That could save us a considerable amount of money, but yeah. So we have 60 days to make the actual appointment. So 60 days. So after the 30-day recruitment period where we will be collecting applications, we would schedule a board meeting for the board to be able to hold interviews with candidates, qualified candidates, and then discuss a permanent appointment at that time. As long as that appointment happens before the end of the 60-day period to fill the vacancy, we would not have to have a special election.
Do we have to recruit for 30 days or can we have the recruitment period for a shorter period of time? To help us meet that 60-day period?
We certainly could have a shorter recruitment period. 30 days is just pulled it out of my brain, out of nowhere, really. If you wanted to hold a 15-day recruitment period, this is really up to the board, how you want that recruitment to go.
I think 30 days sounds fair because then it would align with the next board meeting in 1 month. So
30 days from when?
tomorrow,
See,
as fast as they can. When does the next water bill go out?
It could take up to 60 days, but we could bring somebody in before then if we so choose.
Well, we're already 25 days in.
Right. But so if we put the recruitment out when the water bill comes out, then
Well, a notice could go out, would be posted before then.
We
When
can
does-
certainly put an ad in the newspaper, something on the website. If I can get this access to the Facebook page, which I've been trying to work on, we could post something to the Facebook page. And try to get the information out that way. With the intention of putting interviews on at the very next meeting for appointment, which would be April 1st. I think we have a request to move that to the 8th, so we would be really down to the wire, but
I think,
That sounds like a good idea, but I would really just like to see some recruitment. Especially in the water bill. The town of Collbran page.
if it'll fit in that space on the water bill, we will certainly put something on there.
I'd
Rest
like it
assured.
to go out, I'd like it to go out in an envelope. With an announcement. Sometimes our water bill goes in an envelope, Angie, like Gary was saying. And it would be hard to miss if it goes in an envelope with a separate piece of paper.
We could do that. I just want the board to be aware that there would be a probably additional postage cost. That postcard is pretty inexpensive for us to send out, but just as long as you're aware of that, we're happy to do that.
Okay, so if you do this, this is to stop the election, is that correct?
no.
No.
No, it doesn't have anything to do with the election.
Setting up the recruitment does not have, I thought that you would do that instead of having the election.
No, the special election's still on.
Okay, because it sounded to me like you were trying to cancel it to do this.
No, it's a done deal. It's already on in the,
But they're trying to fill one seat.
Mhm.
Which,
If I could clarify here, because we're talking about two different seats here. So there was a recall petition filed for 2 trustees, one of which is still active and will be held. Is it in early April? Is the recall? Someone on town staff? Remind
25th
me.
of March.
Well,
25th
yeah,
of March.
Thank you. So that recall election is still on for the 25th of March. But there was the second recall petition for trustee Zentz filed. Trustee Zentz submitted her resignation before the ballots could be sent to print for that. And so the town did not have to pay for printing ballots for a recall election that was no longer necessary due to her resignation. The board authorized canceling that portion of that of the recall election. And now we are talking about how to appoint or elect someone for the remainder of trustee Zentz's term. As Angie said, we would have to call an additional separate special election because of the timing that trustee Zentz's resignation was received in, and that would be an additional cost for another election later this year, merely to fill the seat until 2026. The alternative we're discussing is for that second seat to have an appointment process. The other recall election will still occur later this month.
I just have a quick question. You said the board authorized canceling that portion of the special election? We didn't.
Or
weren't asked.
I guess, yeah, thank you for correcting me there. And I think actually the resignation was received after the last board meeting. So it's not, so you didn't actually authorize it, but we are, I guess, the staff direction we are seeking is to get direction on whether we need to proceed with calling a special election or whether we need to, or whether we can move forward with the recruitment process. Sorry for mischaracterizing that earlier, but thank you for correcting me.
Okay, thank you.
I move to initiate a recruitment process to appoint a qualified citizen resident of Collbran to the board for the Collbran Municipal Code Section 2.08.030.
I'll second that. If it can go out in the mail in an envelope with an announcement. On the water bill, with the water bill.
And I agree with that, just for the transparency to the public, I think it's worth the extra postage myself. That way it's their choice whether they want to open it and read it, or we can't have any complaints that they didn't know.
What is your definition of qualified?
Over the age of 18, registered voter.
Lives in the city limits.
For 1 year or more.
There's a list via state statutes of the.
Okay. We have a motion and a second.
Trustee Winkleblack,
Yes.
trustee Evans,
Yes.
trustee Price,
Yes.
Mayor Wilcox.
Yes. Okay, number 11. Attorney Wilson Scarberry update.
So Angie included in the materials for the board meeting a link to a resource from CIRSA and CML on quasi judicial hearings. And the reason why we wanted to do a refresher this month is because you may have heard there's going to be a meeting on the 18th concerning a subdivision application that has been filed by a developer that is seeking permission to subdivide a property within the town. And I believe they are constructing or asking for approval to subdivide it into 42 lots and construct a single family home on each of those lots. So why we wanted to briefly talk through some of the quasi judicial process here is because most of the time when you're sitting as the board, I guess on everything else you voted on tonight or might vote on at a meeting, except for the liquor license approval we heard earlier, you are wearing your policy cap and you can vote yes or no on an item for any reason or no reason at all. But when you have a matter like the liquor license renewal we had earlier, or the subdivision approval process that we are going to go through later this month, you are exercising your authority as a quasi judicial body. And so you're bound by some different legal requirements, and there are different legal standards for your vote. So with regard to subdivision specifically, subdivision is a right that all landowners have statewide under Colorado law. And so any decision by a local government that impacts that has to go through due process under the Constitution. And if they are denied the exercise of that right, so if their subdivision development permit was denied for a arbitrary or capricious reason, which is basically a fancy legal way of saying there wasn't a factual or legal basis for denying the application, then that can expose the town to liability. We can get into the specifics of the subdivision application and specific questions the board might have about the application at that meeting, and I will go over and kind of give the same spiel at that meeting, but we wanted to take the opportunity to at least kind of make sure the board understood the process for quasi-judicial hearings and if there were any questions on the subdivision application. One reason we wanted to bring this up is because, like I said, landowners have a right to subdivide their properties under Colorado law, and the subdivision code of the town is also very specific in that if a developer has met all of the criteria in the code, then they are essentially legally entitled to have that application approved. One of those requirements is that they have submitted a completed application. The code says the completeness of the application is initially determined by staff. Staff has determined that the application is complete. And so you will see all of those application materials at the meeting. Another key piece of this is that the town has some land dedication requirements where landowners can be required to dedicate land for a public park or things like that. There is also the alternative of doing a fee in lieu of dedication. And so that can also be discussed at the meeting. But again, if the developer meets that requirement under the code, then that is really all the question is there. There are some design standards in the code, as far as I have been able to find at the moment. There are, or at least it says that the town may adopt subdivision design standards. I don't believe the town has any existing subdivision design standards, but that does not mean that the zoning code and other various aspects of the town code would not also apply to the subdivision. And sorry, I'm just making sure I have everything on my notes. And then the last legal requirement under the code is that the subdivider is required to build some specific public improvements for this new subdivision. So the sketch plan that they have submitted, which will be on the meeting agenda and you all will be able to review ahead of the meeting, shows the design of the new subdivision. They are, I believe, extending 2 streets and then adding another small street so that there can be vehicle access for all 42 lots. So they are going to be required to build those streets, build the curb and gutter, build and install any of the water and sewer infrastructure, as well as grant easements to the local electric utility and gas utility so that they can serve those properties. And then once they have completed construction of all of those public improvements, they are required to deed that over to the town. That will all be done pursuant to a subdivision improvements agreement. I am waiting on some final feedback from the town engineer on the initial draft of that before I send that over to the developer to begin discussing the specifics of that agreement with them. And the board will also have an opportunity to look over that agreement at the next meeting. But I would just say it will be a very long agreement, but essentially what it says is the developer will be required to build all of the public improvements that are displayed on the plat that the town is approving, and then convey all of those improvements back to the town at the end of construction. The last piece I want to address here, because we get questions about this all the time. Every time I have done a subdivision approval meeting in a local community, I have gotten questions, especially from members of the community along these similar lines. There are some provisions in Title 18 of the town's code that are review criteria. The specific section is 1824-100, paragraph B, that has some specific review criteria that apply to all land use applications. But there are some fairly vague phrases in there. It talks about, the compatibility with the surrounding area and the desirability of the proposed use. So some of those are more applicable to different types of land use approvals than a subdivision. But I just want to be clear, when we're talking about a subdivision, if someone on the board votes no and the application ends up getting denied, and your vote, you either do not explain the legal basis for your vote, or you say the basis for your vote is something along the lines of, I just don't like this development. I don't want to see growth in town. I don't want to ruin the views of the people who are now going to be looking out at these houses instead of, the mountain landscape that they currently have. That is not a legitimate basis for denying the subdivision application under the code. And if the board makes a decision like that, where there is a denial and it is not based on that the developer not meeting one of the explicit criteria I discussed earlier, there is a almost 100% chance that the town will get sued and will lose that lawsuit. Lawyers don't normally like to make promises like that, but I can almost promise you that if you deny a developer's subdivision application based on arbitrary and capricious criteria, they're going to sue you, and it will be a very quick decision against the town if that application is denied. That's not to say that the town can't work with the developer to make sure that this this new subdivision that's going to be added to the town is consistent with the town's existing zoning code, is harmonious with the rest of the community. But ultimately, like I said, landowners have a right to subdivision, and the code is pretty clear about what we can and can't, the town can and cannot require for them to do before they are granted a subdivision. So that's the end of my spiel. Happy to answer questions. And like I said, this was just a preview. You're going to get a lot more detail as we get closer to that meeting on the 18th.
Do we have a copy of the proposed subdivision in the office here? Still.
I don't know.
They brought
What was
one
the,
in- when they brought the proposed subdivision in. And I saw it, I didn't notice that there was, you mentioned 2 streets. The only street that I saw in the proposed subdivision was coming in on Clancy. And then making a Y and coming up with. You know, two streets with 2 cul-de-sacs to turn around, but everything would have to be funneled back out through Clancy.
hold on, Carla, I just sent a request. Can you let me share my screen real quick?
Should be able to now open.
Okay. Can you all see this on the board, or wait, sorry. Let's try that. Okay. Can you see this now?
Yes,
This is, I believe, the sketch plat, and you'll receive all of these materials ahead of the meeting for review. But I had this pulled up, so I figured I would just go ahead and share it. So, Mr. Mayor, I believe what you were referring to is they are going to come in along Clancy here. They're extending an existing street. And it looks to me like Road B here may or may not be connecting to something down there. And then there is also this road here.
Yeah, I would like to know what that other road is connecting to, is it, whether it's over the top of the hill and coming out in the. What we call the Dean Scott subdivision, or.
It does. It looks like they're showing that the sewer stubs out at the end of that street. So I assume there are not other properties further along there, but they may be constructing that with the intention of, allowing, providing access to future parcels or future subdivisions. But that's certainly something that we can get more clarity from them all, from the developer on ahead of that meeting on the 18th. Stop sharing now.
Wilson, was there a traffic impact study done? Because that is a tiny street to support all the, 2 houses. One vehicle per house would be 84 additional vehicles up and down that street.
Yeah.
And
So the code, as far as I have read, though, if there's something in the code that requires a traffic impact study that you've seen, then definitely direct my attention to that. I'm not aware of a legal requirement for a traffic impact study, and they have sent over, or at least in the materials that I've reviewed, I have seen several reports in there, and I have not read all of them, and there is nothing titled a traffic impact study as far as I am aware, but that does not mean that there is not some part of a report that deals with that. That is a piece of this that, again, the board you could have a dialogue with the developer about whether they're willing to prepare or include a traffic impact study with this, but as far as I'm aware at this time, that is not a legal requirement under the code for them to have prepared that before submitting an application.
how could we go about requesting that? Is that possible or not?
So, I mean, you could amend the code to make that a requirement for subdivision applications going forward, but that would not apply to this subdivision. For this subdivision, it would be entirely a negotiated process with the developer of whether they are willing to undertake and provide that kind of study to the town prior to approval. But just a hypothetical here, if they said, we're confident that it's not going to be a huge traffic impact, but we also don't want to do a study to back that up. The fact that they are not willing to sort of bend over backwards to do a traffic impact study would also not be a legitimate basis for voting no on the application, but certainly does not hurt to ask the developer and see if that's something they're willing to do to, make the board and the folks in town more comfortable with this application.
can we make that a condition of approval?
He just answered that.
Yeah, I think to be specific, I guess that's slightly different than voting no. So, but my initial reaction to that is I doubt that that would fly as a condition of approval. But if the developer is willing to do that, then then they will, and they can provide that to the town. I guess the question is, you know, what happens when it, because we're talking about a study here, but then the sort of question afterwards is, well, what happens when we get back to study and it either says, you know, it's not going to create a significant increase in traffic, or they have some recommendations on, you know, you really ought to maybe instead of having a stop sign, have a traffic light, or, you know, putting a speed bump in. I don't know what that recommendation would come back as. That would be something that you could potentially include in the subdivision improvements agreement, that if the traffic impact study comes back and has any recommendations, that the developer could be required to comply with those recommendations. But again, that's only going to be if the developer is willing to not only procure the study, but then potentially make changes to the design based on the results of that study.
So what part of nothing from Mesa County falls into this? Because in Mesa County, which we are in Mesa County, you would have to have a traffic impact study.
So the county has their own land use regulations that apply in unincorporated land. In any incorporated municipality, the county's land use code is preempted by the local land use code. And so while Mesa County might require a traffic impact study for a subdivision that is being constructed on unincorporated county land, it is up to each municipality within Mesa County to require or not require a traffic impact study within their incorporated territory.
Thank you for answering that, clarifying.
Well, it's my understanding that we worked on the codes 30 years ago, that we accepted any new development that we did go by Mesa County's, as far as, you know, street width, the curbs, gutter, sidewalk, all of those improvements had to be brought up to Mesa County standards.
So I guess if we're talking about road and right-of-way construction standards, that's different from a traffic impact study. So the county might require that as part of their land use approval process, but then their requirements for, you know, rights of way have to be, depending on the type of street, it has to be so wide, and the curbs have to be so tall, and things like that for the construction of rights of way or other public improvements. That's a separate requirement at the county level. And the town may well have incorporated Mesa County's design standards to say, you know, we want our roads to be constructed to the same standards as county roads, but that would only apply to the construction where, you know, they're bringing in a contractor and actually building the rights of way, and we can require them to comply with any applicable town codes that have certain design criteria for rights of way or sidewalks or other parts of the public improvements that will be constructed for this.
The second access road is, Gary mentioned, Clancy is a very tiny street. I mean, it's smaller than Wagon Wheel. If current residents so choose to park a vehicle against the curb in front of their home, if they do it on both sides, you can barely get one vehicle through those two vehicles. Even on Wagon Wheel Court, there's no way you can get two vehicles that are gonna bypass each other without hitting something.
It'll be interesting when heavy equipment's going through there.
Will the town be required to plow those streets?
Yes.
So that's gonna be a problem. It's too narrow.
Mm-hmm. And is it not a fire hazard to only have one street, one exit in and out?
That's what I saw on the
I
drawing. When they brought that to us some time ago when I was first on the board, they gave us a drawing. There's only one road that goes in.
That's
I mean, we got one road that comes in. They can go down two streets, but both those streets, then you have to channel all of that into one road. And you think about school buses driving in these streets, you think about the impact it's gonna have on traffic. Speeding, you know, all those kind of concerns when you have increased traffic like that, I think it's a real concern of mine. And there must be something in terms of, you know, the law in terms of that, you have to meet certain standards to keep the community safe. And having those number of units come into the community, the kind of traffic that will bring in, to me, is of concern.
I think these are all questions that we have to wait till the hearing to really discuss.
On the 18th,
Yes,
they definitely have to be discussed, but.
So I think I would agree, these are things to discuss with the developer at the meeting on the 18th, just to respond to a couple of things. And I was trying to pull up some of the, so a piece of the process here is that the town can request comments from any other applicable agencies on the application. And I don't know for certain whether anything was sent to the local fire protection authority for any kind of commentary on the potential fire risk that was being discussed earlier, and if that would potentially require widening the roads or doing something in this subdivision with regard to parking to making sure that there's not an issue like that. But if the local fire protection authority has any comments on that, that's certainly something that can be folded in. But again, for this application specifically, the town will be bound by whatever is currently in town code with regard to design standards for streets and something like that. So while I appreciate all the concerns that have been raised about, you know, having proper width for streets and making sure that there's not an issue with regard to fire safety or things like that, the appropriate way to address that is to amend your street design standards going forward, so that for all new applications as they come in are subject to those design requirements. But this application will be subject to the same requirements that are currently imposed in the town. And so if that street design has not been, if there have not been issues with that street design with regard to safety, then I would not expect there to be issues with this new development. But again, these are all probably better questions to ask the developer in terms of, you know, what's the actual width, and have they looked at how much width there's going to be for cars if there are you know, cars parked on either side of the street, as there, you know, frequently are in like certainly where I live, there's cars on both sides of the street all day long. So yeah, questions for the developer. I can look into whether there's been any commentary from the fire authority, and yeah, any other questions before we move on?
You said we'll get a lot of information before that. It'll come in email, or how will we get this information before that hearing? Because we have no information.
Right. It will most likely be over email. The one thing I'm just thinking through is there are a lot of the application includes several reports, a sketch plat, and especially the sketch plat. I shared that earlier, but some of those files are quite large. So we will send out an email. It's possible that email will have to have a link to, you know, like a Google Drive folder or something like that. Angie and I will figure out the best way of sharing all of the materials with the board and making sure that everything gets in the packet. And we'll try to organize it when we send it out, so that again, you're seeing all of the relevant information, all of the reports that they have submitted along with the application, all the things like that. And you know, I think that's going to be relevant to the decision you have to make with regard to whether they have met the application criteria under the code.
and I would assume that because this is a public hearing, that the public can come in and get copies of the application prior to the hearing.
Yes, since this is a public meeting, anything that is in the public meeting packet would be open to the public. And if the board, wants to include any or all of the application materials in the public materials that go out, then that could be open to the public as well. I don't know if, when I have done meetings like this previously, the developer has shown up with full size, like printed out construction prints, and offered anyone in the crowd the opportunity to come up and take a look at that, because it's a lot easier to look at plans like that than it is on a small digital screen. But I don't know what the developer is going to bring, but certainly everything that we have been provided with so far, we can make available to the board and to the public.
Well, I think it's incumbent upon us, also the town, to determine, as I recall, we have adequate water supply. And the equivalent board says that we had a recent study that shows that our sewage, ability to take care of sewage and everything, we have to make some major improvements in that area. So you think about the impact of 40 some odd units in terms of, are we going to be able to handle that kind of increased sewage? And then we're gonna have to see where we are in terms of an analysis, which we have had. We have to look at it again to see if we can handle the capacity of those units. I think that's incumbent upon us. Is the water supply there? Because now the schools getting our water as well. I mean, their water, our water, and that's a significant increase. And again, like I said, as I recall, I'd have to do some homework on it. But we did have somebody that did an analysis of our sewage facility, and there's reason to be concerned that it needs major improvements as our population is now. And then we have to look at what impact it would have with the possible increase in population. So that's incumbent upon us, but I think it certainly should come into play when we look at this development.
So I don't know. I'll just briefly respond. I don't know about the specific sewage study you're referring to, but I can say in the application materials that the developer provided, they have they specifically have reports on water and wastewater. So I believe that's specific to both water availability, and then there's also some studies where they looked at drainage and stormwater runoff, things like that. So I don't know if their study on wastewater will specifically address, I would assume it probably won't address the specific issues that were in the town study, because they may not have been aware of that prior study, but they will certainly have in their, or I believe they have in their application, a study that addresses kind of their anticipated impacts on the town system as a result of this development. This developer is going to have to build all of the new sewer infrastructure, so the town will not be responsible for extending sewer lines out to this new development. The developer builds them, and then once they're complete, they're deeded back to the town. And also, every single one of these property owners is going to be required to, or I assume the developer will pay it up front, pay for a water and sewer tap for their facility. And part of those tap fees is supposed to go to, the ongoing maintenance and upkeep of the town system. So, it's, again, we can look at that study. We can see what the developer has done in terms of looking at this, but that, they're going to be buying into the town system, and the town sewer system will, I can't do the math. I'm not good at math very quickly, but that's also a lot of new money. $4,500, I believe it's $4,500 per sewer tap fee for each of those 42 homes, can hopefully go to whatever necessary improvements might need to be made to the rest of the town sewer system to handle the load of these new properties.
So are we approving the subdivision, or are we approving rezoning?
It's a subdivision application. It's not, so I believe the parcel is already zoned residential. And they are not requesting as far as I know, they are not requesting a rezoning. Because they are dividing it into multiple plots, that will allow them to construct a single family residence that is compliant with the town's zoning code on each of those 42 lots. But as far as I'm aware, there is no rezoning here because it is already zoned residential.
See, and there's a conflict because our street is zoned residential as well. But because I have a vacant lot at 807 Wagon Wheel Court just a couple of years ago, the state came back, the state passed an ordinance that it was rezoned as commercial. Just as the tract A, that's that 10-foot strip behind the park is zoned commercial per the changes at the state level. So I don't know if the state's gonna have to be involved or not.
So I can go back and double check the application, and if necessary, I can even work with town staff to review a zoning map that's up to date. But my recollection in looking at this was that as part of the application materials, the applicant verified that the parcel is currently zoned residential. And so I don't know specifically what happened with that parcel behind the park, but at least with this property, it is zoned. My understanding is that it is zoned residential. It is not a commercial zoning, and there is no rezoning as part of this application process.
It's the way in this county because my taxes doubled on, the property taxes. It's kind of the same thing if something's just agricultural, or if it's zoned residential agricultural, which they had to change for us out on the sunny side. But it was the county that informed me that if it was vacant, and maybe they're just saying that they're going to be taxed commercially on each lot until a house is built. I don't know. That's something that has to be looked into, I guess.
That may well have been the case, that was specific to how it's because commercial and residential properties are valued differently for assessment for tax purposes. So that may have been unique to that specific situation, but that wouldn't apply to this subdivision.
Well, it's in the city limits. That's the thing. I've been here 34 years, and until the state changed that, mine was zoned residential until it's for this whole time that I've lived here, until the state changed the law. So I don't know if the county is not collecting taxes that they're supposed to be collecting or what, but according to what the county had informed me, that even if it was zoned residential, that if it was vacant, and the only other way I could get by it was to make a continuous use application with the county and put it all on the same tax number as my residential house that I live on.
So I guess again, we're talking about valuation for a assessment here. So I can't say how the county has been taxing this parcel up until now, but if their subdivision application is approved, my understanding is they are trying to break ground later this year, and so it may not be by the end of the year, but once they build houses on all of these properties, they will not be vacant land, and whatever these folks have to pay in property taxes is going to be between them and the county. I know the town has its own mill levies, but the county is still ultimately the one that is kind of responsible for processing taxes and setting the the evaluate or well, in the state setting valuation for assessment ratios for residential land. But again, we're just talking about taxes here. That's not really an issue of whether what the zoning is on this property. As far as I'm aware, the zoning is residential, and that those are the standards that will apply for the setbacks and anything else that's required under the zoning code for all of these new homes.
I understand that. I just, when I got my tax bill and was shocked, I went to the county and they told me that that's why, is because the state rewrote it. In fact, there's a minimum of a $7,000 evaluation. And that, I mean, there's no way that, I mean, you can't do anything with tract A, but other than it's a part of the park and it's, you know, accessed, but it went from $12 a year to like $150 a year in taxes. So I guess it's may need to communicate with the county or the state or something and see how it's gonna.
Wilson, I have a quick question. Was proper notification mailed out to the residents within whatever the code says, 200 feet, 200 yards, whatever?
My understanding is yes. I did not personally verify that, but I believe I remember reading that was one of the things that was on the checklist of things they had to do for the application. That is specifically in the code, and I believe the applicant met their responsibility and mailed out. I think it's within 300 feet of the proposed development. So yes, I is my understanding that was done.
And it got printed in the Daily Sentinel or somewhere?
I think there was a specific, because there's an interesting set. I remember there was something specific on this. I believe that they may have put the notice out, and I'm sorry, I don't have the specific answer on this ready to go. But
And I believe Wilson.
Go ahead, Angie.
And I believe, Wilson, that we'll have a lot of this information in the packet to present to the board on the 18th. And it'll answer a lot of these questions once you get that packet.
What I was trying to look for, and to Angie's point, we will make sure this is in the packet, is I believe my recollection under the code is there is sort of an either or of they are required to mail out notices to everyone within 300 feet. And then there either has to be notice in a newspaper of general circulation, or there has to be notice basically made through the town ahead of time. But again, we will come back and be clear on that. But as far as I'm aware, they have met all of their notice requirements, both with regard to the town and any of the folks who live within 300 feet or whatever the distance is under the code.
And that certification process, part of the hearing process, correct?
That was the first piece I addressed. There's an initial determination of whether the application was sufficient, and that includes making sure that they have at least met or have indicated that they are going to meet their notice obligations and all of the other, they have to submit a sketch plan. They have to submit, while we went over this earlier, there's not a traffic impact study. There are other things the code says they have to submit. The code says the initial determination of completeness of the application is made at the staff level. That determination was made. They submitted a complete application. At that point, it gets handed off to the board, and you are reviewing all of the application materials, and we can have that dialogue with the developer at the meeting.
And remind me, was this property already annexed into town limits?
Yes, if we were dealing with if it was not in town limits, they would need to annex first, and it's sometimes common that you will do an annexation and subdivision at the same time, but this property is already within the town.
Okay, I thought they had an agreement that they would annex at the time that they started building or something. I remembered something.
That was before I.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay.
Melanie?
Moving right along.
This study that you had done, given the amount of water that's available to the town, did they by chance tell you in the study approximately how many tap fees you could actually sell and provide water to?
They just said something along the lines of, we have enough for the pending school and development. It was very vague.
Because generally you only have a certain amount of water and, I mean, you can only supply so much.
Yeah, that
I
was
mean,
really
and
vague.
even at $4,500 or $4,500, you're looking at $189,000 just in tap fees. That doesn't get very far with the water system.
No. And Travis from the American Legion really wanted to address the board because he was on the board in Weld County or something. And they had feasibility studies and they said, yes, you can support this growth. Yes, yes, yes. And then they got all this growth and guess what? There was not enough water.
And it happens a lot.
Because you can do all the feasibility studies to project, yes, we have enough water until you tie in another 100 houses and a school that uses 12,000 a day, then bam. You don't know. It's just
Over in Florida, Colorado, they built this multi-million-dollar sewer treatment plant. And then ended up not having enough water to actually even treat the sewer plant they had to haul water to. So I just,
it's scary.
I would think you'd wanna know how many you can actually supply with what water you have.
You can do a FOIA request and get that feasibility study, I'm sure.
Yeah, at this time, I think
Oh, I think we need to know it.
well, our usage at this time is 30% of capacity with the,
For the school.
well, and the school isn't gonna be, on that piece, the study, the school wasn't gonna make that much difference. It's gonna be more the residents that add on to the line going down to the school or this subdivision that was gonna put more.
Right.
Unless the school grows and doubles, student wise, but.
But that's something to think about.
Oh, yeah.
You really have that amount of water to supply them, because if you charge them the tap fee and then you can't supply them the water, that's a real problem.
Mhm. And our tap fees haven't gone up for over 20 years. They need to go up, but that's,
Yeah, over there, they're like 13 grand
yeah.
for in town.
Yeah, actually.
Yeah. I bet you know that you know.
Yeah, something we need to research. I mean, I really think so.
Yeah, we've requested it to get taken care of. Thank you, Wilson.
Thank you, Wilson.
Yeah,
Staff
no.
update?
Or go ahead.
Go ahead, Wilson, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say, we'll keep working on this and you'll hear more from us before the meeting. That's all I got. I'll let Angie do the staff update so we can all get on with our evenings.
Can I ask or just bring up a point before we move on? Has anybody seen, no?
I'm sorry, but can we ask who you are and who you represent?
Oh,
Yes.
just me. Nothing.
Just a community member?
Yeah, just an avid fan, I should say.
Okay.
There's a document that I've seen all over the place. Town of Collbran, Colorado, 2035 comprehensive plan. Has anybody seen that? Okay. That covers it. There's no agenda behind this. I've seen it. I haven't read it. I just found it now while everybody was talking. So that's all I wanted to. Thank you. Still a fan.
Thank you.
All right.
Staff update? Yeah, first time.
The staff update. At this time, I don't have any major updates for the board. I did send out a a new doodle poll, and requesting some availability of the board so that we can get our retreat taken care of in early April. And I think until then, I'll just be bringing some housekeeping and cleanup items to you on agendas. Probably one per meeting that we have, just to sort of get ready for your new staff and clean up any some policy matters, and just have some discussions like a social media policy, a few other things for your consideration. But that's all I have at this time. Thanks for your time and for running an efficient meeting this weekend or this evening.
Is there any update on having a current fee schedule available?
A fee schedule, that's another thing that is a cleanup item that I will be bringing before the board. That's on my list. So these are all things that I hope to discuss with you and, create a strategic plan on our what we wanted to accomplish in the next couple of months while we're here. It's just the availability of the board and the staff to get together for a retreat just didn't work out or isn't working out until early April. So, but I will still bring these items, for your consideration on agendas, just to sort of in an effort to keep us moving forward together.
Thank you. Trustee informational under items for future agenda.
I don't have anything.
I just want to ask if there are fire hydrants in the school water line. Do you know, Wilson?
Yes, well, or I guess I know there are not. There was some discussion early on whether they would be required along the route of the line. And my understanding is that Plateau Valley Fire specifically said that they did not need and did not want fire hydrants along the line. That's and you were just asking about the school water line, right? Not the subdivision.
Right. Is there some for the subdivision?
Yes, there is one for the subdivision, and that was actually something I flagged with the town engineer. I was like, I want to make sure that we have the appropriate number of fire hydrants for the subdivision. So that will be a question I have a specific answer to at the next meeting. I flagged that just today when I was looking at the plat. So
good.
And the school has the fire suppression in place right now, before
Yeah.
they're working off of their own.
Yeah.
source of-
Yeah.
They do have something, I don't even know if it's in the form of a hydrant or anything, but we have the capability of putting out a fire.
But
We have
I'm
the
talking
capability
about
of starting one too.
down 3:30.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah. But if the fire department doesn't think it's necessary, then there you go. So.
That's the problem.
And then two, I guess it's not gonna be a board meeting to do the event planning, but there's a lot of decisions that have to be made, like on insurance and, what our insurance will cover and how much money is available to spend. And it sounds like decisions are gonna be made. And in the past, a lot of decisions are made at workshops, and we don't want that to continue. So I mean, is it the board's job to recruit a committee to do this? I just don't want to see one or two citizens making every decision. I'd love to see a committee. And I know in the past, town staff was planning every event, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. So moving forward, we need a lot of direction of how it's supposed to be done. And the steps we need to take to get it there. Angie? Yeah.
Are you addressing me?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So typically for event planning, those are citizen-led committees, citizen organized and driven committees. I do understand, I believe that you mentioned to me, Trustee Price, that there's a $41,000 budget line item for events to pay for events. I have not confirmed that, but if that's in fact the case, I did look at your special event permitting process. There is an application process. Per your code, it states that that process is administrative in nature, so that special events can be approved by your administration. The conflict there is there's a 41,000, if there is a $41,000 line item, you have some budget appropriations there, which would need to be made by the board. So what we would do in a situation like this, my recommendation would be to allow the citizenry to initiate those committees and organize together themselves as committees to organize and plan those events, come up with a budget, prepare the special events application, and then those can go on before the board for budget consideration and appropriation.
Right.
And that
So,
$40 doesn't just cover Heritage Day, it covers any event that the town has been involved with throughout the year.
yes, so the board would need to, or would want to, or need to consider that when they were approving those special event applications and budgets during that process. That would,
So how do
that
we
would be the
go-
recommendation.
How do we go about establishing committees? The board doesn't establish committees or ask for interest in committees. I mean, how does that happen?
So citizen committees are citizens that come together and organize of their own accord to create and plan an event. That would be a citizen-led committee, citizen organized committee. That's the recommendation.
That's probably something that we need to notify the citizens, like, you know, for the Easter egg hunt that we had last year that the town did. I mean, it was very successful, but it's, if the community is gonna take on those events, we need to let them know that they need to come up with their committees and.
Yeah, how do we go in committees?
So is the board privy to the folks that were involved in the planning of those events in years past that the board might want to or be willing to reach out to and connect with those committee members or those community members and ask if they have interest in organizing said events?
It was always the staff. The staff was in charge of every community event. And they put it on. So we're looking for direction to move forward since now you're telling us that that's not the staff's job. So how do we move forward to keep events going?
So one way that you could do that is, you know, if the board wanted to reach out to community members, engage interest and the citizenry organizing into committees to, you know, plan certain events, people that have been involved in years past, which we are not privy to at town hall. I certainly am not. You know, I think that would probably be the best way to go about that. But those definitely are citizen-led groups and committees that organize of their own accord to submit a special events application for a permit.
Just like the rodeo committee or for a garden, a beer garden or.
Yep. And you know, once you identify folks in the community that do want to continue to move forward with planning those events, if they wanted to come in and town hall, make an appointment or come by at any time, I'm happy to provide them with a special events application process and, you know, information that they need around preparing that application for the board to consider.
If somebody comes to be. If somebody comes in and asks for an application for an event, say the Easter egg hunt. And they also request, like we just handed out funds to support that. If there's $41,000 that. You know. Supported those events in the past and it's been in the budget.
And in that case, as part of their special events permit application to the board, they would prepare just a simple budget. Stating, you know, what they wanted approval for and appropriation of those funds for, and that would be up to the board to appropriate those funds or approve those funds for those events.
Okay,
Right, so my main concern is we just have Joe deciding that he's putting on the 4th of July event and this guy's planning it too, and he's booking a band and he's booking a band. How are we gonna get all these people together? It just doesn't.
You know, I mean,
I think
So-
one thing that's in past experience, and this is really from California, but the board can have a committee agenda item for regular board meetings, and then you as a board come up and say, this is a title for a committee, and you assign one board member so you don't have quorum, and then you solicit applications from the town, citizens that might or might not want to take part in it. If it doesn't go anywhere, it doesn't go anywhere. But if it's successful, then you have one board member that is in charge and leading the committee, and then town members that have been notified of it and then can participate and make it successful. And then you have the budget things covered. If people want to come in and have an idea from the community, which I think was was just being talked about, they can come in and do something and make a suggestion to the board to have a committee for something, a project that they want to do following the same lines.
So years ago, from talking to past board members, in the spring, when the new board elected, then they appointed a committee for events, and they appointed a committee for Parks and Rec, and then those committees worked amongst themselves and then came quarterly or whatever to present what they came up with to the board. So that would be my suggestion, but
I think it's in line with that too, right? As long as you have an agenda item, a list of things that you want to support and people want to get involved, then yeah, absolutely, what you were just saying.
thanks. Yeah. Go ahead.
So since you're going to be sending out a letter anyway in the water bill, why don't we include an additional letter that says, going forward, the town will not be responsible for setting up these events. However, we do have money in the budget for the events, but we would like to have people come forward to set up a committee. And then when they do that, have one of the board members be a liaison to each one of those committees. So that there's always, like this gentleman just said, there's only one board member. And that's who they report to, and then that can get brought up in a meeting on the agenda.
Yeah.
And then they just bring forward, like Angie said, you know, they submit a budget as to what they want to spend, but I think don't waste your postage on 2 little pieces of paper, include that.
yes.
Because you can send out 3 full sheets with 1 stamp.
Yeah, and I saw that on one of the, I check out other municipalities' websites, and there was, one of them said, had a picture of each board member and said she was the liaison
Yeah.
to the school. And so she went to all school board meetings and communicated what was going, and this one was Parks and Rec, and this one was, and that'd be great.
We had that at Bridal the night ago, we had a road committee, and we had a liaison for the board, we had a fireman committee and a liaison for the board. We had our Parks and Rec person that set up all our events and a liaison.
I think it is. So I think it is important to differentiate between an advisory board and a citizen committee to plan an event. So an advisory board is what you all are talking about, basically, where you would have a town board member that is as a liaison to a advisory board, like a Parks and Recreation Commission or a Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. And those are typically created via resolution or ordinance in a community for a specific purpose. So, you know, different event committees would certainly not be advisory boards that would, you know, have a year-round appropriations and et cetera, et cetera. But just slightly different, but very similar concept.
I think the advisory board is, you know, it was brought up to me a moment or two ago from someone who does not live in town, that the town consider having an advisory board of people who do not live in the town. But in this particular case, I think an advisory board does not have to be exclusive to people who live in town. It could be, because a lot of people who don't live in town are into the rodeo, so they want to see the rodeo happen, and they like the 4th of July, they want to see the 4th of July, so. Perhaps but I think that advisory board needs to be, we need to have, trustees involved in it, but also I think overall, we need I think the town manager, the town administrator needs to be, central to that advisory board as well. You're representing the town in addition to us, so that's something to consider when we get a new town administrator, that what role they should have in it. But I think it's a good idea to advertise for an advisory board, maybe not just for each specific event, but for any event. You know, 4th of July, the rodeo, Christmas, Halloween.
To push that we get organized and not just have individual citizens making plans on their own.
Right.
Like, we need a committee that you come in, you sign up to be on the committee, you go to the meetings.
So on that letter, then, you put your list of events that you'd like to see happen. And then that tells you how many committees you need. It might, one person might be on all 5 or all 6 committees. But at least you put it out there, letting people know that, hey, we aren't going to do this. We need help from the community.
And the first thing will be the rodeo. We'll see how that works out, huh?
Well, we have Easter.
There's already.
Oh, Easter, I guess I don't think. Yeah. My kids are all grown up, they got that. Terry.
I would be interested, talking to another citizen, and she said that she would be glad to talk to the Easter.
Can you have her come talk to Angie?
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to hear that. Was that a comment from someone in the audience?
Yeah, hi, Angie. I was saying, do you
Hi.
have someone that wants to help me, interested in doing the Easter egg hunt? Would we be here, maybe she and I can talk to you about the event?
There's a citizen.
I can't.
There's a citizen that's interested in helping out with the Easter egg hunt for it. Can they make an appointment with you and come talk to you about that? And
Yeah, yep, I'd be happy to give them the special events permit information and guide them through that process in a supportive manner.
good. Thank you. Public correspondence. Upcoming meeting dates, the next meeting is March the 18th, 2025. Public hearing, Terrell Park subdivision. Request to reschedule April 4th. It says April 1st, 2025. DOT meeting to April 8th, 2025. So
How long does it take to cure and canvass an election, Angie?
So once the election is complete, there are a couple of things that have to happen. And we discovered that it may not be done by April 1st, depending on a few different factors that are required by state statutes. So the April 8th, moving the meeting to April 8th would alleviate the need to have a second special meeting to cure and finalize the election. And because it will most certainly be done by that date. That's why we're requesting the change, so we don't have to have 2 meetings in a row.
okay. So
Do we need to vote that?
we need a motion for that, right? To change that date or?
Oh, no, as long as I get a general A-OK, then we can roll with that.
I'm good with April 8th.
Yeah.
Is it definite that you can't, have everything done by the 1st?
It is not definite, so there are a few different factors, things that are required by statute. that will play into that. And elections are fun like that. They're not exactly set in stone on the dates, so.
If you have a conflict on that date that I can possibly,
Could we move it
Change
to
that.
Wednesday or Thursday? It doesn't always have to be a Tuesday, the board meeting, does it? What do you have available till that week?
I can't do it on Thursday, Wednesday would be fine.
But that would
Wednesday,
also give her one day.
I'm good with any day to set up, cause I'll be zooming. From the beach.
If necessary,
You'll be on the beach, Carrie?
I can make arrangements for my other
Just-
meeting.
Just keep the camera high.
So I do have a conflict.
I have no problem switching it to Wednesday myself,
What day we going? Seventh?
the 7th.
Is that good for you? Phil?
I can do that.
Seventh, okay.
Well,
I think we're just trying to avoid the obvious because April 1st is April Fool's Day.
Bad luck.
well, Wednesday is actually the 9th. I mean, just to be clear, the 7th is Monday.
It's
Oh,
Monday.
yeah, does that work for you? 8, 7?
That doesn't matter. So just clarifying the date.
All right. So the 7th.
So Wednesday is the 7th, April 7th?
No, it's the night.
9th.
Oh, yeah.
Wednesday, April 9th.
Right, sorry.
Can you announce the meeting for Friday? For events? That wasn't listed. The event planning for Heritage Days? Is this
Yeah,
Friday at 9?
This Friday at 9, there'll be a meeting for planning the Heritage Day events. At 9 AM in the town hall.
And I think advisory can be good, but I think we do have to have somebody central.
Yeah.
employees to kind of be the contact person, make things happen.
Right. I mean, there's a lot of ordinances that have to be
Yeah.
upheld and security and.
Of course, in this case, most communities, 20% of the people do 80% of the work, so it's gonna be. People are gonna have to appeal to them to see if they can get involved and help us out, but not spreading it too thin.
Get a motion for adjournment?
Just adjourn my.
I'm down, we got St. Patrick's Day, too.
We're adjourned. Hopefully that didn't hurt your ears.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
No. Yeah, why don't, and you'll just call you when she's ready, because we'll have to pull things together and stuff. So. And Trevor said he was gonna be out of town, so I don't even know if it'll be tomorrow. So I'll just have Andy call you, unless you're getting ready to go out of town.
Cool, yeah. Come get you, Abby. You want to come to the meeting?
Yeah, just had that. I don't. He's been asking me.
So we'll make sure that we notify him that everything is approved tonight. I don't know that he's gonna expect a copy or anything before he moves. So, but if he does, I'll touch base with Andy and we'll get you to sign right away. But I think just probably the notification that everything's in place is probably enough for him to, move forward. So. Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
No, I won't be here. Yeah. Okay, I understand.
There is, that I said,
I think so. I haven't seen any around it. so I don't believe so.
Oh, I see.
You said you're really-
That'll work. Yeah.
I haven't put that, I haven't done the, I didn't get to that, because I didn't get to it first.